What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. Okay, so we are continuing on with DC's Drown to Earth event. And again, like this whole Drown to Earth concept deals with like these other oceanary gods basically showing up on Earth and attacking it. But again, like we don't explicitly know what their motivations are. It really seems to be just kind of like inflicting chaos and panic everywhere they go. But they were basically summoned here by Aquaman under the auspices that he was essentially summoning people who could serve as aides of sorts, because remember, the source wall's fractured, and it has been ever since Dark Knight's Metal. And so the idea behind this was, okay, let's bring in other forces out there who could help us against whatever happens to come out of the source wall, and then just kind of go from there. The issue is that it's one of these things where if you stare into the abyss long enough, eventually it stares back out, it stares back at you. And so it's one of these things where Aquaman called on forces, not fully understanding what they were, only to realize that they were basically villains. Now, in their arrival basically came this massive swelling of the oceans and this invasion fleet that essentially saw the transformation of all these various beings that came into contact with the water. And that's why things are really kind of popping off and going nuts, is because in Atlantis proper, with a brunt of the kingdom having been lifted up from the oceans to kind of stand this symbolic gesture as a kind of a unification between the Atlantean world and the human world, of course, this leads to the ocean being tainted and then just transforming all these different people into these various sea monsters. Now, again, this is actually kind of cool, because at this point in time, this is one of the things to bear in mind, is that Mera is currently the queen of Atlantis. Now, this is something that I want to talk about here for a second, because it's a pretty important thing. When it comes to the role of Mera in the Aquaman mythos, of course, she's usually depicted as this extremely strong and capable wife of Aquaman, but that's usually about the extent of it. I mean, she has her own story, she does her own thing, but historically speaking, Aquaman's been dethroned as the king of Atlantis multiple times. I mean, it's always kind of like a thing of his character, right? Like Batman and Superman, whenever they first meet, they always fight. Dick Grayson always rebels against Batman and always goes on to become Robin whenever DC reboots, whatever the case is. But in the instance of Aquaman, he's dethroned and then he always takes his throne back. It's really only a matter of time before that happens. I mean, Aquaman's not going to remain kind of like a departed king for a long time. That's not going to be like the standard going forward. Eventually he'll go back, Mera will concede the throne, Aquaman will become king again, and that'll be that. But in the interim, this is not something you normally see. Mera taking over and becoming queen of Atlantis for any real measure of time. It's not a normal circumstance. Not only that, what it does is it actually shows a pretty cool circumstance in terms of how she handles this. Because right now, Atlantis is in shambles. It's literally in pieces. I mean, these waters have just kind of run amok across everything. And most people had no idea what was going on. And a lot of that was because of the fact that Atlantis has and does continue in a lot of ways to be segregated away from like the surface world. And so because of the fact that this attack happened so astronomically fast, because it literally like swept across the world like a plague, not only did humanity not really have a chance to respond, neither did Atlantis. And so before anybody even knew what was happening, suddenly all these Atlanteans are being transformed into like these monstrous looking things and then attacking everything in sight. And so it's really just one of these, just kind of like run and flee for your lives kind of situations. Now, of course, that means the doors get open to Atlantis. Those who make it in find safe refuge, and Mera kind of makes a promise to this young kid named Dodo that she's going to do everything within her power to basically protect the place. Now, this leads directly into Batman making contact with Mera, because that's one thing to bear in mind is once she became queen of Atlantis, then she became a part of the Justice League. Now, she was kind of an interim, or I guess she was kind of not really an honorary member, but she was part of it for a time. She did join the Justice League, but it didn't really seem to be a permanent thing. At this point, so long as she's queen, it'll be a permanent thing. And the reason why is because the Justice League is an Earth-based team. Like the role the team serves is to protect the Earth. And so because of that, like whoever it is that's currently ruler of Atlantis will be the person the Justice League will have to work with. Now, Mera is queen of Atlantis for the foreseeable future. One, because Aquaman's missing, and two, because he conceded the throne to her. And plus, she's a hero in and of herself, which means the Justice League will reach out to her. And that's exactly what happens here. Batman reaches out and says, look, this is like an emergency broadcast to anybody out there who happens to be listening and like is not a weird ocean creature. The Earth is being conquered, it's basically being drowned, life is being transformed into whatever weird form this happens to be now. Anybody who can answer the call, answer the call. And in this moment, Mera responds. The problem with this is that Mera is running into the scenario that Aquaman ran into. And it's one of the things that she was never fully able to appreciate until this very moment. When it came to Aquaman being king of Atlantis, he was basically having to walk this kind of tightrope. On one half, it was his allegiances are to Atlantis. Those who were in Atlantis swear fealty to him. The other half is he's a member of the Justice League. He's part of the surface world. And so he has to do what's best for the surface world at the same time. And the question that was constantly being asked of him is, if you have to choose one, which one do you pick? And that was the struggle of Aquaman. It was always trying to find a way to choose both. And Mera is basically finding this out the hard way. Using her aquakinetic powers, she's keeping these oceans at bay from like plunging into Atlantis and basically destroying the capital city, and in turn killing everybody in there, or at least turning them into those weird ocean creatures, while at the same time kind of trying to organize a rescue front for those within Atlantis proper who have not really been transformed yet. I mean, the various people who are kind of out there and so on and so forth. There's, however many thousands of people who are currently in danger, and only around 3,000 can actually be rescued. I'm sorry, around 5,000 can actually be rescued. So she has to, one, marshal those forces and get those guys together, and then on the other hand, try to figure out a way to see if it's possible to fight with the Justice League. But she's given the choice here. Batman says, look, your allegiances are to the world. As a superhero, your allegiance is to the world. As a member of the Justice League, your job is to protect the world. Mera's response is, I am Queen of Atlantis. Atlantis first, the world second. But Batman kind of speaks reason here and says, yeah, but of what use is saving Atlantis if there is no world left to save? If all that's left is you? And the response is, then it'll just be us. And that's kind of the struggle here. That's the struggle that Mera has to face in this moment when Batman says, look, this is how bad things are. Like, there's your perception of it being like a global calamity, and then, okay, well, given enough time, the Justice League will save it. Here's how the world really is. We're literally on our last leg here. There's almost nothing left to save. The world is drowned. Like, we need people who have knowledge of the oceans. We need people who have any kind of superpower whatsoever. You're holding back the oceans of the world. It's literally what you're doing here. If you do not join in, there's not going to be anything left for you to save. You're going to be here, and then eventually you'll be conquered, and that'll be the end of that. And not only that, it's only a matter of time before you give in, before your body and your mind can't handle holding back the waters of the ocean, in which case you're going to lose everything. And so what Batman's basically asking of Mera here is to say, look, you're going to have to sacrifice Atlantis. You're going to have to give up Atlantis. You're going to have to sacrifice Atlantis and the people in it for the greater good to save the world. And that's a hard ask. That's a very, very big ask to come up with for, one, a newly elected, or I guess a newly appointed queen, and two, a queen that cares so much about her people. And so it's one of these things, because remember, if she does this, from Mera's perspective, if she does this, if she gives up, if she sacrifices Atlantis, and if she lets it all go and then joins the Justice League to save the world, then the people of Atlantis will see it as a betrayal. They elected her to that position because she was an outsider, but because she's a person who could be molded to become a true queen of Atlantis, somebody who could actually serve the throne while not giving too much concern to the surface world. She would be doing the exact opposite. And really, at the end of the day, a king or queen serves at the pleasure of the people. And so if she does this, if she turns against Atlantis, if she sacrifices it, goes to fight alongside the Justice League, saves the world, and then comes back, the people will turn against her. And she'll be exactly where Aquaman was some period before, when the people turned against him and ousted him as king. That's the concern she has. But at the end of the day, that concern is basically assuaged for her when there's a massive explosion, when the generators are taken down, when the waters come flooding in due to her distraction, and she's basically the sole survivor, the sole person who's not transformed into one of these monsters. And at that point, it's a matter of, okay, well then the question's been solved for me. It's been taken care of for me. There'll probably be there'll certainly be some things to answer for. The fact that she was, essentially even toying with the idea of sacrificing Atlantis, will be a lot of chastising going on. You can never make that choice again, that kind of situation and so on. But in the moment, it's basically just her. The problem with this is that where she's trying to communicate with Batman, where Batman's trying to communicate with her, the connection gets severed. And so in her mind, she basically says, there's only one person left that can basically save us. They can help us here. There's only one person that can protect us. There is a person who served the throne of Atlantis, who ruled Atlantis, and who knows the oceans better than I do, and almost as well as Aquaman. If we can find him, and if he's not transformed, then he can basically save us. And so what she does is travel to the highest tower in all of Atlantis, where this guy was in prison. She breaks in, and we end up finding out that it's Orm the Ocean Master, the guy who led the entire Throne of Atlantis revolt. And this is kind of a big deal, because it's bringing his character back, who's basically hasn't really been seen since really the New 52, and it's kind of curious to see what role he plays, because he's very much a gambit here. He's very much a quagmire. If it comes down to it, will Orm try to retake the throne again? That's really the question that's being asked here. When this whole thing is all said and done, when it's all basically fixed, is Orm going to try to take the throne back? Now, of course, Orm being invoked here is very much due to the Aquaman movie. I can almost guarantee it. I can almost guarantee there was never really intention to bring him in until it was like, well, he's going to be in the movie, so you got to feature him somehow. Because in truth, I don't know exactly what he would do, but it is cool here. And it is kind of interesting because it throws in what's very much kind of like a wrench in the monkey works. It throws a wrench in the works is really what it does. It throws in kind of this variable that we didn't expect that could potentially change everything. We have no clue what'll end up happening here. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.